compound of Okoro was always alive with the sound of laughter from children and the pounding of yam in the mortar and the smell of soup rising from the kitchens. To outsiders, it looked like a blessed home. 2 wives, children, and a hard-working husband. But inside, bitterness brewed like an unending storm. Adaeze, the first wife, had been married to Okoro for 10 years. She was quiet, gentle, and hardworking. Her only daughter, Chisom, was the apple of her eye. Yet, beneath Adaeze's calm spirit lay hidden pain. She knew her place in the family was slowly being threatened by the younger wife, Obianuju. Obianuju was fairy, beautiful, and quick with words. She had come into Okoro's life 5 years ago after his marriage to Adaeze, brought by relatives who felt Okoro needed fresh blood to give him more children. Indeed, she bore him a daughter, Ifunanya, and from then on, she believed her position in the family was secure. But rivalry between the wives grew steadily. Obianuju often accused Adaeze of pretending to be humble just to win Okoro's sympathy. She would say loudly in the courtyard, "A woman who has only one child cannot be called a true wife. Let her hide behind her fake smiles." Adaeze would simply walk away, holding Chisom's hand, refusing to trade insults. Yet, her silence only fueled Obianuju's jealousy. Okoro, caught in between, tried to maintain peace. He would scold Obianuju at times, but he never failed to notice how Adaeze's patience made her more respected among the elders of the village. This respect stung Obianuju deeply. One evening, while the harmattan winds carried dust across the compound, Obianuju sat outside, whispering with her mother who had come to visit. "Mama," she said bitterly, "I will not allow Adaeze to sit on my head. She pretends to be a saint, but I will show her she is nothing in this house. Okoro must love me more. He must." Her mother leaned closer, her voice sharp. "Then use your wisdom, my daughter. A co-wife is never a sister. If you don't secure your place now, she will push you out." From that night onward, Obianuju's mind began to spin with dangerous thoughts. She wanted Okoro's heart completely, and she was willing to go to any length to get it, even if it meant tearing the family apart. The tension in Okoro's household grew like weeds choking a garden. Even the children could sense it. Chisom, Adaeze's only daughter, often kept close to her mother, softly asking, "Mama, why does Auntie Obianuju hate us?" Adaeze would smile weakly and stroke her daughter's hair. "Do not speak like that, my child. She does not hate us. Sometimes, people just don't understand each other." But deep inside, Adaeze knew her daughter was right. Obianuju's envy burned hotter each day. She noticed how Okoro's eyes softened whenever Adaeze served him food, how he lingered in her heart longer than expected. Even though Adaeze had only one child, in her mind, it was an insult. She, Obianuju, had given him another child, Ifunanya. Yet, Adaeze still enjoyed more respect and admiration. The crack widened one market day. Obianuju overheard 2 women gossiping near the palm oil store. One said, if not for Adaeze, that home would scatter. She holds it together with her quiet spirit. Obianuju is beautiful, yes, but beauty without patience is like a pot without soup." Obianuju's face flushed with shame and anger. She clenched her fist and muttered under her breath, "So this is what they think of me. They will see. Okoro himself would see." That evening, Obianuju decided to test her husband. She prepared a special meal, jollof rice with goat meat, his favorite, and dressed in her finest wrapper with coral beads glistening on her neck. When Okoro returned from the farm, She welcomed him with a wide smile and served him quickly. He ate, praised the food, and thanked her. But when Adaeze walked in with Chisom carrying water, Obianuju's heart sank. Okoro's eyes lit up as he said warmly, "Adaeze, you must be tired. Rest a little. I will come to your hut." The words pierced Obianuju like a knife. She smiled faintly, but inside, her rage boiled. That night, she lay awake beside her sleeping daughter Ifunanya, whispering to herself, "No, this cannot continue. He belongs to me. I will make sure Adaeze loses everything." Little did she know that her plan to claim Okoro's heart entirely would set in motion events that would change their family forever. Obianuju became restless, her days filled with false smiles, her nights with bitter thoughts. The more she watched Adaeze's calmness, the more it enraged her. She wanted Adaeze out of the picture. But how? Her opportunity came when she visited her cousin in the next village. This cousin, a woman named Nnenna, was known for her special charms. She was rumored to help women win their husband's love or silence troublesome co-wives. Over cups of palm wine, Obianuju poured out her frustration. "Nnenna, I cannot bear it anymore. Adaeze acts like she owns my husband. She has just one daughter, yet he favors her more than me. I want Okoro's love to be mine alone. I want Adaeze to be forgotten." Nnenna leaned closer, her eyes glinting. "You speak like a true woman. Do you want Okoro's heart tied to you forever? There are ways. A little charm in his food, a little powder in his drink. He will forget Adaeze completely." Obianuju hesitated. "Charm? Is that not dangerous?" Nnenna smiled. "Dangerous only if you fear. Do you want to remain the shadow wife while Adaeze enjoys respect? Think well, my sister. Men are like goats. Tie them with rope, and they cannot wander." That night, Obianuju returned home with a small calabash hidden in a wrapper. Inside it, a black powder and a piece of red cloth. Nnenna has instructed her, "Sprinkle the powder in his evening meal. Tie the clothes under your pillow and speak these words, 'Okoro, you are mine alone.' Within days, you will see the change." Obianuju's heart raced as she hid the calabash in her hut. She stared at her sleeping daughter Ifunanya, whispering, "I am doing this for you, my child. We must secure our future." Fate had its own plan. Chisom, Adaeze's daughter, had seen Obianuju slip the calabash under her bed. Curious and frightened, she ran to her mother. "Mama, I saw Auntie hide something strange. It looked evil." Adaeze's heart sank. She knew Obianuju's jealousy had reached dangerous heights, but she had not imagined it would come to this. Quietly, she whispered, "God of heaven, protect my child and me. If this is a battle, then fight for me." What Adaeze did not know was that that charm was just the beginning. The storm was about to break. Harmattan dust floated like pale ash across the compound as the evening folded into night. In the kitchen hut, Obianuju stood before the hearth with a calabash tucked beneath her wrapper, her breath quick and shallow. She lifted the lid of Okoro's favorite stew, goat meat simmered in pepper and onions, and glanced towards the doorway. No one. The fire crackled, a single spark leaping and dying. She untied the red cloth, scooped a pinch of the black powder Nnenna had given her, and whispered, "Okoro, you are mine alone," before dusting it into the pot. Behind the kitchen wall, a small shadow hovered. Chisom. She had followed quietly, heart thudding, remembering what she had seen under Obianuju's bed that night before. She watched the powder disappear into the stew and swallowed a cry. She darted away, the anklets on her foot tinkling softly as she ran. In Adaeze's hut, Chisom's words tumbled out in frightened whispers. Adaeze's face hardened, then softened with fear. "My child, do not fear," she murmured, tying her wrapper tightly. "We will be wise." She did not storm the kitchen. She did not scream. Instead, she waited until the stew was carried into the courtyard, took the serving ladle from a startled maid, and said evenly, "Let me taste it first. Our husband worked hard today." She sipped, winced at the bitter undertone the powder could not completely hide, and set the ladle aside. Obianuju's eyes flashed. "Is your mouth the chief taster in this compound?" she said with a sweet smile that did not reach her eyes. Adaeze smiled back. "If the stew is sweet, we will all know." Okoro entered, dusting harmattan from his shoulders. The wives knelt to greet him. Bowls were laid. When Adaeze moved to serve, Obianuju stepped in too quickly, blocking her with an elegant bow. "Let me, my husband." She filled his bowl, hands steady, voice calm, heart roaring. Adaeze watched without blinking. Okoro ate slowly at first, then more eagerly. He praised the pepper, the tenderness of the meat. Obianuju's smile bloomed, but as the moon rose above the udara tree, Okoro's cheer dulled. He rubbed his temples, squinted at the lantern, and blinked as though the room had shifted. "It is nothing," he said when Adaeze leaned forward, worry in her eyes. Perhaps the sun was strong today. He stood and swayed. Obianuju reached for him. "My husband." "I'm fine," he snapped, more harshly than intended. A silence fell, thin and sharp. From the threshold, Ifunanya peeked in, wide-eyed. Chisom slipped an arm around her half-sister's shoulder, tugging her away, as if to carry the child out of the moment and back into safety. Okoro retired early, complaining of a throbbing behind his eyes. In the deep hush that followed, Adaeze washed the bowls herself, pouring the leftover stew into a separate pot and setting it aside. Obianuju lingered in the dark edge of the courtyard, fingers worrying the hem of her wrapper. She wanted triumph to taste sweet. Instead, it tasted like iron. Near midnight, a restless wind rattled the palm front. Okoro tossed in his sleep, mumbling fragments, names braided with fears, then woke up with a start, drenched in sweat from the shadows of the doorway. Adaeze's voice came soft. "Do you need water?" he hesitated, then nodded. When she placed the calabash in his hand, he saw the tremor she fought to hide. For a breath, something steady returned to him. Memory, trust, the old peace. Across the courtyard, Obianuju lay awake, eyes open to the dark. "It will work," she whispered to the rafters. "It must." But outside, the wind shifted, and the night fell like it was listening. Morning came pale and brittle. Okoro rose late, a heaviness pressing behind his eyes. As he stepped into the courtyard, the women bent to greet him. He lifted his hand, weary. "Let the kitchens rest this morning. I will eat later." He turned away, and for the first time, Obianuju felt not triumph, but a flicker of doubt, nimble at her resolve. By noon, the village had begun its quiet work of rumor-making. The two palm wine tappers paused on the paths beyond the compound wall. "They say Okoro looked like he wrestled a spirit last night," one said, chuckling. "Polygamy brings interesting visitors," the others grunted, or interesting wives. Inside, Chisom swept the veranda in 10 strokes as if Ifunanya watched, hugging a rag doll to her chest. "Why is Papa sick?" Ifunanya asked. Chisom's broom slowed. "He will be well," she said finally. "We must be careful with what we cook and what we say." The girls shared a small look, the kind children trade when they know something grown-ups refused to name. Adaeze, moving through the storeroom, counted and recounted yams, garri, palm oil, dried fish. Her hands knew the inventory better than her mind. When she finished, she took the separate pot, the ones with last night's stew, and walked to the back of the compound where the ash pit smoked softly. She did not pour it out. She lifted the lid and held it to her nose, registering the odd bitterness again. Her jaw tightened. She covered it and tucked it high on a shelf in the smokehouse, beyond Curious finger. A record, proof, insurance. Obianuju, catching sight of Adaeze returning empty-handed, pinned a smile in place. "Senior wife, shall we divide today's chores?" she asked sweetly. "You are often so tired. Age is not a friend." Adaeze's reply was gentle. "Peace is everyone's friend." She moved past without bristle or sting. The refusal to fight was a blade of its own. By afternoon, Okoro summoned both wives. He sat on the low stool beneath the mango tree, elbows on knees, eyes shadowed. "This house is no longer a home," he began, voice even. "I will not be dragged into quarrels I did not start. From today, 2 kitchens, 2 stores, 2 hearths. Share nothing you do not wish to share, and stop this poison of rivalry from spilling into the children's hearts." The word poison slid into the space between them like a snake. Obianuju's chin snapped up. Adaeze's gaze flickered, then steadied. Okoro continued, "Until I am satisfied that peace can live here again, I will spend alternate nights in each hut, and I will not entertain complaints. If there is another public quarrel, I will send one wife to her father's house for a season." He stood, decision ringing like iron. Let it be so. When he left, the courtyard held his breath. Separate hearts, separate stores, a house bisected by suspicion. For the neighbors, this would be news enough to chew for days. For the family, it was a line carved into earth. Obianuju was the first to speak. "You heard him," she said, voice low. "He grows tired of your dramatics." Adaeze met her eyes. "There is smoke," she replied, "and there is fire. The wind will tell them apart." That evening, as the first embers glowed in different kitchens, Chisom sat with her mother whispering, "Should we tell him?" Adaeze smoothed her daughter's hair. "Not yet," she said. "Truth must arrive at the right hour, or it will be turned away at the gate." Across the yard, Ifunanya watched her mother grind pepper, the stone moving in hard, short slope. "Mama, are we angry forever?" she asked. Obianuju paused. Her hands trembled just once. "No, my child," she said, "not forever." And when she looked into the mortar and saw her own reflection ripple in the red oils, she felt the slow creep of something colder than anger. Consequence. Above them, the mango leaves whispered in the evening breeze, as if the tree had heard the decree and was already rehearsing the next secret it would have to keep. Okoro thought alternating nights between Adaeze and Obianuju would restore balance, but instead, it made the cracks in the household wider. Adaeze, proud and wounded, counted her nights with her husband like a soldier tallying victories. She circled the days on her wall with chalk, reminding herself that she had been there first. Obianuju, young and restless, was not content to wait quietly. On Adaeze's night, she would sing loudly while sweeping the courtyard, her voice floating to Adaeze's window like a taunt. Okoro lay awake many nights, staring at the ceiling, knowing his plan has pleased no one. Adaeze accused him of neglect, saying her years of loyalty were being tossed aside for a new face. Obianuju, on the other hand, whispered bitterly that she had given him youth and beauty only to be treated like a visitor. The alternating arrangement left both women angry and Okoro trapped in a cage of his own making. In the village, tongues wag. At the market, women pitied Adaeze for having to share her husband after so many years. Others mocked Obianuju, saying she had only brought herself half a man. The gossips stung Okoro, but his pride would not allow him to show it. In his heart, he knew peace was slipping away like sand through his fingers. To quiet the endless quarrels, Okoro declared a new rule: 2 kitchens. Adaeze would cook her meals and Obianuju would cook hers. At first, it seemed like a wise decision, but soon, even food became another weapon in their war. When Adaeze's pot released the rich aroma of ogbono soup, Obianuju would wrinkle her nose and accuse her of showing off. At night, Obianuju deliberately pounded yam late, the sound echoing like drum beats in Adaeze's quarters. Even the children were caught in the middle. Chisom would sometimes carry a plate from her mother's kitchen, only for Ifunanya to mock her, saying Obianuju's cooking was sweeter. Neighbors whispered that the compound had become a theater. Some said Adaeze had bewitched Okoro to keep his loyalty. Others saw Obianuju had tied him with charms. Whatever the version, the conclusion was always the same: Okoro had lost control. Every meal, every night, every whispered rumor stacked higher and higher until the house became unbearable. The 2 kitchens, meant to create peace, only fed the flames of rivalry, and in the silence of the compound after dark, Okoro could feel it, that one day, soon, an irreversible decision would have to be made. The market became the echo chamber of Okoro's household. Women who had never stepped foot in his compound now spoke as if they lived there. Some claimed Adaeze was preparing to drive Obianuju out once Chisom married well and brought wealth home. Others said Obianuju was secretly seeking a dibia to secure Okoro fully, leaving Adaeze with only memories. These rumors reached Adaeze and Obianuju like poisoned arrows. Adaeze's pride stiffened. She began to walk to the market with her head high, basket in hand, daring anyone to pity her. Obianuju, meanwhile, stopped going alone, always dragging Ifunanya with her, as if the girl's presence shielded her from the whisper. Okoro felt the pressure mounting. At the palm wine joint, evil men who once respected him began to laugh about Okoro's double trouble. They advised him to choose peace or be destroyed. That night, when he returned home, he sat silently under the udala tree, watching both kitchens light their fires, 2 flames in one compound, burning separately, yet slowly consuming him. He knew the decision could no longer be delayed. The breaking point came during a family meal that Okoro had insisted on. 1 table, he commanded, just 1 meal as a family, like it used to be. At first, it seemed possible. Adaeze cooked egusi soup, Obianuju made jollof rice, and both dishes sat side by side on the mat. Chisom and Ifunanya exchanged uneasy glances, aware of the storm in the air. For a few minutes, there was silence as hands reached into the bowls, but it didn't last. Obianuju mocked the egusi, calling it too salty. Adaeze snapped back, asking who had invited children who only know pepper into her home. The words rose like thunder, sharp and unstoppable. Chisom burst into tears. Ifunanya shouted back at her, and soon plates clattered against the ground. Okoro slammed his hand on the table, but his voice was swallowed by the chaos. When the shouting ended, Okoro stood, his chest heaving. "Enough," he said, his tone colder than the night wind. "I will no longer live in this madness. A choice must be made. and it will be made soon. The compound fell silent, each woman staring at him, each child frozen. For the first time, both Adaeze and Obianuju realized the same truth. The life they had fought so bitterly for was about to change forever. After the disastrous family meal, Okoro retreated into silence. He no longer lingered in either women's kitchen. He ate quickly, often with his head bowed, then vanished to the veranda or the farm. At night, instead of splitting his time evenly, he sometimes chose neither bed, preferring to sleep on a raffia mat under the udala tree. The silence frightened both Adaeze and Obianuju more than his anger ever had. Adaeze whispered to Chisom, "Your father is thinking of something. When men go quiet, it means they have chosen." Obianuju, meanwhile, pressed Ifunanya to keep her ears sharp. "Watch Adaeze. If she makes a move, tell me." But the children, caught in their mother's war, began to lose their innocence. Chisom stopped laughing freely. She spent evenings brooding, unsure how to protect her mother. Ifunanya, once playful, now looked at Adaeze with suspicion, as though the woman's shadow itself was an enemy. And all the while, Okoro measured his days with heavy thoughts. Each sunrise felt like a countdown towards a decision he could no longer escape. The turning point arrived when Okoro sent for his elder brother Okechukwu, who lived in a nearby village. Okechukwu was known for his stern fairness. His word carried weight in family disputes. When he walked into the compound, tall and grey-bearded, both Adaeze and Obianuju stiffened. "Brother," Okoro said, bowing his head slightly, "my home has become a battlefield. I need counsel. I need judgment." Okechukwu did not smile. He sat on a low stool and looked from Adaeze to Obianuju, then at the children who hid behind their mothers. 2 wives, 2 daughters, 1 man, yet no peace. "I warned you, Okoro. A man cannot build a house with 2 pillars leaning against each other." The women exchanged sharp glances, already bracing for what to come. Okechukwu's words were like a gavel striking. This cannot continue. One kitchen must close. One part must remain. If not, this family will destroy itself. The verdict hung in the air like smoke. Adaeze's heart pounded with pride, Obianuju's with fear, and in that moment, everyone knew the irreversible decision had finally begun. When Okechukwu left the compound, the silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the creak of the wooden gate. Adaeze stood tall, her wrapper tight against her chest, her chin raised. She interpreted Okechukwu's words as a shield for her position, the first wife, the foundation of the household. That night, she spoke openly to Okoro. "I carried your first child, Chisu. I planted my feet here before anyone else. If a kitchen must close, it will not be mine. I have endured too much shame already, Okoro. I will not be cast aside like a stranger." Chisom clung to her mother's waist, nodding fiercely. Adaeze stroked her daughter's hair, her voice trembling but firm. "Even if this house burns, I will not be the one pushed into the ashes." Okoro, seated on the edge of the bamboo, rubbed his head. He did not argue. His silence was a weapon, but Adaeze's words struck like arrows. In her heart, Adaeze began to believe she had already won. Obianuju, however, was not ready to surrender. She waited till the compound grew quiet, then crept to Okoro's mat beneath the odala tree. In the moonlight, her face glistened with tears as she knelt before him. "My husband," she whispered, "I know I came after Adaeze. I know I am the younger wife. But have I not given you Ifunanya? Have I not honored you? Must my child grow without a father's roof over her head?" Okoro looked at her, but said nothing. His silence stretched, broken only by the night incense buzzing. Obianuju pressed her forehead to the ground. If Adaeze's kitchen remain, let me at least remain in the compound. Let Ifunanya not be treated as a visitor. Whatever place you give me, I will accept. Just do not cast me into the cold. From the shadows, Ifunanya had followed her mother, listening with wide eyes. She saw her mother's pride bowing in the dust, and for the first time, she understood the weight of being the second. Okoro's chest rose and fell heavily. His choice was no longer about the two women. It was about two daughters, two futures, and one household that could not bear them both. The morning after Obianuju's midnight play, Okoro summoned both wives and their daughters into the courtyard. The sun was still soft, but the air was heavy, with the smell of palm oil from Adaeze's kitchen and the faint smoke of Obianuju's dying fire. Okoro stood with his staff in hand, his eyes bloodshot from his sleepless night. I have thought, he began slowly, his voice like a drum beat, and I have listened to our kingsman. This house cannot go on with two fires. From today, one kitchen will stand, one will not. Adaeze, your fire will remain. Obianuju, you will quench yours. The words struck like thunder. Adaeze lifted her chin proudly, her arm wrapping protectively around Chisom's shoulder. Obianuju staggered back, as though struck, her eyes darting from Okoro to the pot she had scrubbed clean the night before. Ifunanya, too young to hold her tongue, cried out, "Papa, why must Mama's fire die? Is her food poison?" Her small voice trembled, but it carried. Okoro's staff hit the ground once, silencing her. The house must know one mistress. That is the way. Obianuju collapsed on her knees, weeping. The neighbors who had gathered at the fence whispered loudly, some pitying, some mocking. The irreversible decision had been spoken. That evening, as the compound settled into uneasy quietness, Obianuju went into her kitchen hut for the last time. She knelt by the hearth where she had cooked countless meals, her hands tracing the cracks on her clay pot. Ifunanya stood at the doorway, her small frame rigid with anger. "Mama, we would not beg them," the girl said, her eyes flashing. "If Papa had chosen, then let us leave. Let us build our own fire elsewhere." Obianuju's hand trembled as she lifted the pot. In her chest, shame and grief twisted together. She carried it outside, where the fading sunlight painted the courtyard red. Without warning, she raised the pot high and smashed it against the ground. The shattering sound startled even Adaeze, who had been humming triumphantly as she stirred her soup. The shards scattered like a broken promise across the earth. Obianuju lifted her face, streaked with tears, and met Okoro's gaze. "You have silenced my fire," she said in a voice raw and low. "But remember this, ashes do not die. They wait for the wind." Then she turned away, gathering Ifunanya's hand. For the first time since her marriage, Obianuju's eye burned not with submission, but with defiance. The sound of Obianuju's pot breaking traveled beyond the courtyard, carried by gossip faster than the evening breeze. By the next morning, neighbors clustered at the compound gate, eager to recount what they had seen or heard. Mama Ebere, the midwife, shook her head loudly. "A man who silences one wife will never know rest. Okoro has planted a thorn in his own bed." Others muttered in agreement, while a few sided with Adaeze, praising her patience and seniority. Inside the house, Adaeze walked with her head high, but her ears burned with the whisper. Chisom repeated what she had overheard. "They say Mama Obianuju will curse this house if she leaves angry." Adaeze hushed her daughter, but the words sank deep. Okoro returned from the market that day to find neighbors waiting with advice, questions, and sly remarks. He brushed them aside, insisting, "I have brought order to my house." But even as he said it, the stares of the people gnawed at him. That night, Obianuju and Ifunanya remained in silence, their hearts dark, no fire burning. It was a silence so heavy that even the crickets seemed to pause, as if the compound itself was holding its breath. The next morning, Chisom and Ifunanya crossed paths at the water well. The tension of their mother's rivalry now flowed through them like a river seeking a new course. Chisom smirked as she filled her clay jar. "So your mother has no kitchen anymore. Will you beg from us to eat?" Ifunanya's eyes blazed. "We do not beg. My mother says ashes wait for the wind. One day, you will see whose fire burns brighter." She shoved her jar against Chisom, water splashing over their feet. The quarrel drew other children, who began chanting and mocking, repeating their parents' words. By the time the girls returned home, they carried the anger of the playground back to their mother's hut. Adaeze scolded Chisom for stooping to fight. Obianuju, however, listened to Ifunanya's defiance. For the first time in days, felt a spark of pride. Okoro, hearing of the clash, roared in frustration. "Even the children now mock me. Am I not the head of this house?" His voice echoed, but no one answered. For the first time, Okoro began to realize his decision has not ended the strife. It has only shifted it into sharper flame. Gossip began brewing from the neighboring village. Some said Obianuju planned to live with Ifunanya. Others whispered she wanted her people to come from and confront Okoro. The compound buzzed with speculation. Adaeze, though outwardly calm, was unsettled. If Obianuju truly left, tongues would wag that she had driven her co-wife away. Though Adaeze would be called the victor, victory without peace tasted bitter. When Okoro confronted Obianuju, she raised her chin but kept her voice measured. "I came into this house with dignity. If you strip me of it, I will not sit in shame. I will return to my father's house before I rot in silence." Her words cut deep. For the first time, Okoro realized that the issue was no longer about pots and kitchen. It was about pride, respect, and the mark his name would bear in the village. Okoro found himself walking the village path alone at night, torn between two fires. If Obianuju left, the village would accuse him of injustice. If he restored her kitchen, Adaeze would feel betrayed. At the palm wine hut, elders muttered when he passed. "That is the man whose wives fight louder than his goats," one said. Another laughed. "A man with two kitchens is never full." Their laughter burned in Okoro's ear more than any insult. Back home, Chisom and Ifunanya no longer played together. Their rivalry had become open warfare, each reporting the other's mischief to their mothers. Even the servants tread carefully, afraid of being accused of favoring one side. One evening, Okoro gathered both wives and their daughters under the moonlight. His voice was weary, stripped of its old thunder. "This house cannot stand if it is divided. If one of you must leave, let it be said that I tried to keep you both." But as he spoke, Obianuju's silence spoke louder. She was already far in her heart, her eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the compound walls. And Adaeze, though she said nothing, clutched Chisom's hand tightly, as if preparing for a battle she knew was not yet over. It happened on a hot afternoon, when the compound was unusually quiet. A group of men and women arrived, their footsteps heavy with purpose. At the front was Obianuju's elder brother, Ugochukwu, his wrapper tied tightly around his waist, his face as hard as a carved mask. "Okoro," he called, his voice carrying through the compound. "We have come for our sister. You have treated her like a stranger, and we cannot sit idle while her dignity is trampled." Adaeze and Chisom watched from the shadows, their eyes sharp with suspicion. Ifunanya, sensing something great was unfolding, clung to her mother's side. Obianuju stood tall, not crying, not begging. Her silence was her strength. Okoro stepped forward, chest heaving. She is my wife. She eats from my hand. She sleeps under my roof. Who dares claim she is dishonored? But Ugochukwu's response was swift. A woman who has no kitchen is a woman whose voice has been silenced. And you, Okoro, have allowed rivalry to swallow justice. The neighbors, hearing the commotion, began to gather by the fence. The matter was no longer just family business. It had become the village's entertainment. The following morning, Okoro was summoned before the Council of Elders. It was no longer a private quarrel. The entire village demanded clarity. Men who had once praised him for his wealth now shook their heads, whispering about the household chaos. Sitting under the great Iroko tree, the eldest of the council spoke. Okoro, you took 2 wives, and in doing so, you took 2 responsibilities. But instead of peace, you have sown division. Tell us, which wife shall we blame? Or shall we blame you? Okoro's throat burned as he tried to defend himself. I gave them both a home, food, and children. I did not know that a kitchen would become a battlefield. Adaeze sat with her wrapper pulled tightly, her expression proud but callous. Obianuju sat beside her brother, her gaze unwavering. Ifunanya leaned against her mother, while Chisom whispered into Adaeze's ear. The elders murmured among themselves, and finally one declared, this matter cannot continue in whispers and rumors. If the 2 wives cannot dwell in peace, one must return to her people, lest Okoro's name rot in mockery. The word struck like a drumbeat, final and irreversible. The choice was near, and everyone knew it. After the elders' judgment, the compound no longer breathed same. Every corner carried an echo of tension. Every meal was swallowed in silence. Adaeze sat in her kitchen, pounding yam with furious strength, while Chisom fanned the fire. The smoke curled up like a warning, filling the air with bitterness. In the other kitchen, Obianuju stirred her soup quietly, Ifunanya watching her with wide eyes. Mama, are we going back to Uncle Ugochukwu's house? The little girl whispered. Obianuju froze, her hands stiff on the wooden spoon. She wanted to say no, but the truth pressed on her lips. Meanwhile, Okoro wandered between the 2 kitchens like a restless spirit, his footsteps heavy on the red earth. The weight of choice hung over him like a storm cloud. To send Adaeze away would be to defy tradition, for she was the first wife, the foundation of his household. But to dismiss Obianuju would be to tear apart a love that still burned in his heart. At night, when the compound was quiet, the neighbors whispered louder than ever. One wife will leave soon, they said. Which one do you think it will be? Some swore it would be Adaeze. Others placed their bets on Obianuju. For the village, it had become less about justice and more about spectacle. One evening, a small quarrel between Chisom and Ifunanya sparked into something larger. The girls, once innocent witnesses, had now inherited their mother's grudge. Chisom, her voice sharp, mocked Ifunanya's dress, calling it the cloth of beggars. Ifunanya, stung, ran to Obianuju in tears. When Obianuju confronted Adaeze, the compound shook again. Control your daughter, Obianuju snapped. If you cannot teach her respect, then she is no better than you. Adaeze rose to her full height, her wrapper falling loosely as her voice thundered. You dare speak to me like that in my husband's house? You who came second, you who should be kneeling before me. The shouting reached Okoro's ears. He stormed into the yard, his chest heaving. Enough, he roared. If you cannot keep peace in my compound, then peace will be chosen for you. The words rang out like a prophecy, chilling everyone into silence. Even the night insect seemed to hush, as if waiting for what will come next. The irreversible decision had begun to take shape, not by the quiet agreement, but by fire and fury. The morning after the fiery clash, Adaeze woke up before the first cock crew. Her heart beat with a rhythm she could no longer ignore. She looked at her cooking pot, the mortar she had inherited from her mother, the calabash that had served her family for years. They were not just tools, they were memories of her fight to remain first in a house that no longer honored her. "Chisom," she said firmly, "we may need to leave this place soon. Gather your clothes and keep them aside." The girl looked up, confused. "Mama, are we going away? What about Papa?" Adaeze swallowed hard. Her throat dried. "Your father has made his choice without speaking. Did you not see it? His eyes followed Obianuju more than they see us. His nights rest longer in her room than in mine. The elders may uphold tradition, but his heart," she paused trembling, "his heart betrays me." She folded her wrappers one by one, each movement like a quiet goodbye. But as she packed, her pride burned within her. If she left, it would not be as a defeated woman, but as one who refused to be dragged into the mud. Obianuju sensed the shift before anyone spoke. Adaeze's silence was no longer the silence of resistance. It was the silence of departure. And though a part of Obianuju felt relief, another part felt something unexpected: guilt. That evening, she prepared a pot of bitterleaf soup, her favorite dish, to share with Okoro. As she stirred, Ifunanya asked, "Mama, are we winning?" The words cut deep. Winning? Obianuju had entered the marriage for love, for warmth, for belonging. But now, standing in the glow of the fire, she realized that love had turned into a battle with casualties. Adaeze's face haunted her thought, not as an enemy, but as a fellow woman caught in the storm of a man's choices. When Okoro entered her hut, smiling faintly at the smell of soup, she tried to smile back, yet her chest was heavy. She was gaining a husband fully, yes, but she was losing the respect of the village, and perhaps even the softness of her own spirit. In the distance, Adaeze's quiet packing continues. The irreversible decision was no longer a rumor. It was unfolding, one folded wrapper at a time. The compound woke up to the sound of dragging trucks and hushed weeping. Adaeze stood tall at the entrance of her hut, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist, her belongings stacked neatly beside her. Chisom clung to her hand, her eyes wide with fear. Neighbors peeked through the fences, whispering. They had waited for this moment like spectators at a festival. Adaeze leaving the house of Okoro. Some pitied her, others mocked quietly, but all knew the balance of the household was shifting for good. Okoro came out bewildered. "Adaeze, where are you going with my daughter?" She faced him without trembling. "Your daughter will not grow up in a home where her mother is mocked, pushed aside, and forced to fight for space like a stranger. I will go where peace can breathe, even if it means starting with nothing." Her words struck him harder than any insult ever could. For the first time, Okoro saw not just a wife, but a woman carrying her dignity out of his grasp. When Adaeze finally walked through the compound gates, silence fell like a curse. Chisom glanced back once, her small eyes filled with questions her tongue could not frame. Okoro stood motionless, watching as the dust rose behind their step. Obianuju came forward slowly, carrying Ifunanya on her hip. "Okoro," she said softly, "you still have us. The house is not empty." But Okoro did not answer. The truth was heavier than her words. He had gained Obianuju fully, yes, but the joy was sour. The laughter that once echoed in his home now felt like a memory. What was left was a quiet too loud for his ear. That night, he sat alone in the courtyard. The moon watched him without pity. He remembered Adaeze's first days as his bride, her laughter, her sharpness, her fire. He realized too late that a man can win the battle of choosing, yet lose the war of peace. Weeks turned into months. Adaeze found shelter in her brother's household, where she began anew. Chisom adjusted slowly, her laughter returning in small ripples. Adaeze carried pain, yes, but also a fierce relief. She was no longer trampled in daily humiliation. Back in the village, tongues continued to wag. Some mocked Okoro for letting his first wife go. Others whispered that no man truly prospers when one wife lives in anger. Obianuju, though now the undisputed mistress of the compound, could not silence the unease in her heart. She had won, yet it felt hollow. And Okoro, he aged quickly in those years. His nights were restless, not because Obianuju failed him, but because he knew part of his soul has left with Adaeze. The story of Okoro, Adaeze and Obianuju became a cautionary tale told in the evenings that polygamy, though sanctioned by tradition, often breeds wounds too deep for healing, that peace in a man's house is not in the number of wives, but in the wisdom of his choices. And so, the dust of their decisions settled into history, a reminder that sometimes love is not lost in quarrels, but in silence, in pride, and in the moment when one chooses not to fight anymore.